All right, welcome back to The Edge. Google Podcasts are changing requirements to be listed. Barry's briefing us on Google unconfirmed updates. Facebook has to rebuild its ad structure with less personal information. And John Mueller talks about 500 error codes and what may be happening with your website if you don't fix those things. You're listening to News from The Edge for the week of August 16th, 2021 here on Edge of the Web Radio.
From the Edge of the Web studios, here's what we're looking at this week.
Hey, I'm your host here, Aaron Sparks from Site Strategics. Thanks for joining us on Edge of the Web. Every week we bring you amazing guests to talk about digital marketing trends and topics. Each week we're covering the SEO and digital marketing news of the week as a separate weekly podcast, as opposed to our interview podcast each and every week. So we're constantly churning through the news and getting it over to you as quickly as possible. Be sure to check out all the recent shows over at edgeofthewebradio.com. That's edgeofthewebradio.com. This is the Site Strategics Digital Marketing News Desk of The Edge. Joining me this week to get his take on four news items that we curated for your digital marketing news pleasure. He is Morty Oberstein, the head of communications over at SEMrush. Morty!
Is it 4 or like 3.5? Because we kind of covered the algorithm stuff last week also.
Yeah, it's kind of 3.5. We'll give half a nod to Barry, you know?
Right.
We got to get him on.
Like, I feel like every day Barry's going, yeah, another algorithm update.
You think he's like ambulance chasing? Do you think he's just doing some clickbait out there? Do you think that's what he's doing?
No, I just think it's a slow week when he does it.
Here's another. At the same time, I mean, we're seeing algorithm changes every bloody week. You know, there's another one.
By the way, you were very timely this week. So for the listeners, we have a spreadsheet where we throw in the stories that we want to cover. I usually throw in a bunch. Everyone usually says, forget those, let's cover these. So I do it on Sunday.
Yeah.
And I came into the doc on Sunday evening, and the stories were already there. That's the first time that's happened.
That's the first time. I don't think it's the first time, but
maybe
yeah.
What happened? The wife threw you out Sunday?
Yeah. See, I was at so many sporting events. I had to do something. So this was a weekend for sporting events. I was at a football game for my kid. We do it every Saturday, but I also went to a NASCAR race here in Indy, and it was fantastic. So, you know, getting a little bit of additional work in there while they're going around the loop 200 times, you know, you got a little extra time to do that. It was really cool.
I was pleasantly surprised.
I'm glad to please you. I truly am. And it's very pleasing to see the logo that's on.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I'm wearing it because when I get free stuff, I wear it. Hey, everyone want to send me swag? I'll wear it.
Be careful. Be careful.
Well, if H-Reps is listening, I'm not going to wear that.
I just filled up so many inappropriate shirts on my Amazon cart when you said that.
Yeah, absolutely. We do have to get him the
No, it's got to be swag from a non-SEMrush competitor.
Got it. From a non-SEMrush. Yeah, let's qualify that.
No, I just said he totally went over. Like, you totally missed it. If Ahrefs sends me swag, I'm not wearing it.
Okay, gotcha.
Sorry.
But what
Patrick.
about Ahrefs cup? I mean, we've got one of those over here.
Nope. You don't have to have a SEMrush cup?
Yeah, I want a SEMrush cup.
No, I said, do you have one?
We do not.
Neither do I.
Although SEMrush,
I have an Edge of the Web cup.
Yes, you do, and it's a fantastic cup. Actually, SEMrush met us over at SMX back in 2020. Philippe was with him, and we got a nice set of pens and swag. They were really nice. We hooked up and talked a little bit about what we could do with each other or for each other. And my wife stole those really cool pens.
My kids steal all my pens. My wife says when you go to a conference, bring home pens.
Yeah.
So I walk around literally grabbing pens from people like some sort of like thief in the middle of the night. Like you walk by really quickly, grab a handful of pens. Right? You got to have some sticky fingers at the conferences.
You really do. And
they're like, sir, can I talk? Nope. I'm just need the pen. Bye.
I do that, by the way. I'm like, can I take a pen? I'm not interested in your product at all. I just would like a pen.
That's a loss leader right there, isn't it? Oh my gosh! I mean, he's like the swag swiper, no swiping.
I know. I feel bad taking people's stuff. Why not? I'm just not interested. But like, I'm under orders from the wife to bring home pens because my kids will literally destroy and use and lose every single writing utensil in the entire house. This is my only pen.
And you keep it.
I keep it in my sock so they can't find it.
I don't know where to go with that.
And if they find it, they don't want it.
No, exactly. I'm just glad it's in the sock. All right. On that happy note, let's pivot over to some news stories, so we can actually provide information to the people that are actually wanting to hear about news, not sock pens. All right. All right.
Hey, great place to hide your pens from your kids.
There's the tip of the week from Morty Oberstein, head of communications over at SEMrush. All right, from Search Engine Land, George Nguyen brings us some new requirements that are about to appear in Google Podcast recommendations. Beginning September 21st, Google will enforce some new requirements for podcasts to show in recommendations on the Google Podcast platform. The company told podcast owners via an email on Thursday. Podcasts that do not provide the required information can still appear in Google and Google Podcast search results, but I guarantee you're not going to get some high ranking if they don't have these. A valid crawlable image. This image must be accessible to Google, not blocked to Google's crawler, or require a login. The show description include a user-friendly, remember this, user-friendly show description, not laden with spam or keyword optimization. That actually
SEO podcast, best SEO podcast than me, SEO podcast.
Can't wait to transcribe this show.
Well, he just swung for the fences there, didn't he? Yeah, so it actually needs to accurately describe the show. A valid owner email. This email address is used to verify show ownership. You must have access to the email sent to this address. A link to a homepage for the show. Now, that's interesting. Linking to the podcast. Your podcast to a homepage will help the discovery and presentation of your podcast on Google surfaces. Now, here's the deal: is on that there's a lot of links that shows that don't have an actual web page. So, what's the destination there? Is it going to be a Spotify as a homepage or a Facebook page? Or what's the scenario if it doesn't actually have a link to the page? Is it just going to be the Google Podcast page itself? Along with it, podcast author name to show in Google Podcast as the author of the podcast. This does not need to be the same as the owner. And if you hearken back to news last week, Google was actually talking about author links in the rich snippet or the structured data of content. So they're insisting on that level of entity understanding. So they snuck one in here on the podcast level. So with all those requirements, which is not that many, but what do you read into some of the data that they're actually trying to dig into, Morty?
I had the same feeling. It seems like they're looking to get a more holistic and textual understanding of the podcast by asking for not just the author, but also the link to the homepage.
Yep.
Which, by the way, I think is complicated. I use SoundCloud for my podcast, and I'm pretty sure you can add links to the podcast homepage on SoundCloud. You could add social links, a website, whatever the link you want, but RSS feed. So now that's going to be a whole pain in the ass for me.
Yep. And all things being considered, the homepage really should be a non-platform specific page. It should be something that you completely own and can actually present authority and information about either along with the author, what the show's about, right?
All that kind of contextual information. You have, what is it, like it's a Player FM. I always screw up the platforms. There's too many of them this quarter, but Blueberry, a bunch of you can create your own page on their hosting service. So it looks like and you can design. I know the Page 2 podcast guys do this.
Yep.
Right. They have their podcast show on one of these platforms. It looks like their own website, but it's not. That wouldn't seem to provide the contextual information that Google seems to be looking for. Why are they asking for the homepage? I mean, why for the website rather?
Exactly. That's how they worded it, I think. And not to read into too fine detail here, but it also dovetails into what we were talking about last week regarding, your authorship. And as you change, you've got a digital lake behind you, and being able to regularly change your links to an authorship page that you can control. I think this is the same bloody thing. Is that
same thing?
Podcasts should very well have a destination site, not a destination premier or default platform, right?
Yeah, I said with the author, it doesn't have to be the owner of the podcast. So it doesn't have to be Site Strategics. It could be Aaron Sparks. I mean, they want the person, not just the corporation behind the podcast.
Yep. I think this is just understanding a bit more about everybody who's providing content out there, all this rich data, and being able to start parsing it and understanding the relationships between.
I think they have a very hard time with podcasts.
Yeah.
I think they have a very, very, very hard time with podcasts because you're basically getting audio only. And if you look at their rankings for, best SEO podcasts or SEO podcasts, and you look at the carousels, there's a lot of crap. And that's not just me ranking on the other podcasts, because there are a lot of other good podcasts out there, but they're talking about people who haven't published podcasts in years.
And it's still there. Yeah.
Ranking, the first card in the carousel kind of thing.
Yep. Yeah. So time to straighten up our data. And what's just really kind of weird is that podcasting is digitally native. It came from this space. Why in the world is it so tough? Why did it have to take so long to actually be able to get commercial inserts into a live stream? Why was it so difficult to get good consumption data, behavioral and analytic data? It's almost like this.
Oh, it's impossible.
I know.
It's the worst. Podcasting is the worst for that.
But it doesn't make sense because it literally was born of the new media audience. So
you would think there'd be amazing stats behind this.
Yep, exactly.
Who came in, where they left off, did they come back? Yeah. You don't know if a user skipped ahead. I would like to know, did a user skip all of you talking and just went to me talking?
We would like that to know that as well. So, if you wouldn't mind, let us know on Edge of the Web. Do you actually fast forward past me to Morty, or do you fast forward past Morty because he's an asshat? I mean, that's really
true. Or do you stay? I'm like the Howard Stern of SEO podcast. You come to hear what I'm going to say next, kind of thing.
I'm wondering what you're going to say next.
Me too.
All right.
I stay for Jacob interjecting randomly.
I'm wondering what the next article is going to be.
There we go.
There we go.
Here's the guidance that I needed because
someone's got to control
this was going down in flames. All right. Let's talk about things going down in flames. Google rankings fluctuation. Pages are dropping and reappearing in the index from Search Engine Land's Wednesday's daily brief from Barry. August 6th and 6th through the 8th, we actually referred to in our last show about a potential algorithm shift. There was a typical unconfirmed Google search ranking update that they're actually looking at, or Barry was. It's unclear if this is still part of the link spam update rollout or if this is something new. We see numerous reports, he says, both documented publicly and then some behind the scenes of Google having new indexing issues. And we've seen that before last year, about June, whenever lots of sites were actually getting not de-indexed, that's loss of indexing. And at the same time, there was a indexing, a kind of moratorium on index requests at the same time. So we saw that last year, and we're certainly seeing some pages, both new and old pages, dropping in and out of Google's index over the last few days, says Barry. So what do you think about what's happening here? I know this is kind of like a half news piece because we were talking about it last time. We always, if there's something happening in the algorithm, choppy waters, we've got to point out something. But if pages are getting lost, that's a little bit deeper of an issue that is happening right now. We want to focus on.
Right. So, okay, so in terms of the baby algorithm updates, I'll say what I said last time. I did in my fancy, behind the scenes SEMrush tool that no one has access to, but for me, literally.
Wow.
But by the way, I did speak to the product owner on your request, Aaron, and we'll try to work on that. By the way, if you have ideas and requests for tools and feedback, find me. Anyway, it's a bunch of reversals. All these little algorithms, for the most part, are a bunch of reversals.
Mm-hmm.
Site goes up, site goes down.
Yep.
Site lose a position, gain a position, that kind of thing. With the indexing, Glenn Gabe had a cool way of checking on this, by the way. If you want to see what's going on, he actually sent this to me. So big hat tip to Glenn Gabe. And I think it's in Barry's article on SE Roundtable where he covered the same thing. Mm-hmm. But if you go to SEMrush and you look at estimated organic traffic, and all of a sudden you see it's gone and then back randomly, that's probably a case where Google got the indexing messed up, which could be your fault, by the way, or in this case, it's something up with Google.
So if you're what you're saying is indexing or a gap in visibility, gap in
gap in traffic, gap in visibility. Yeah. So if you could see that, that would confirm that it's not just like, okay, you lost rankings.
Right.
I mean, unless you suddenly lost like an algorithm update. But if it's not that kind of thing happening and it's just boom, gone, and then say back again all of a sudden, that would possibly signify, in the case that Glenn showed, it was in and out, in and out, in and out.
That's interesting. We've
so
seen
there was traffic, no traffic, traffic, no traffic. There's something going on with the indexing.
That's interesting. We've seen that on a couple cases of our clients here, just as of late. Some just visibility pockets.
That's, by the way, why it's really important to keep up with shows like this.
Yep.
Because if you're seeing a problem and other people have the same problem, then it's a good chance that this is what's going on.
See, this is an SEO therapy session. This is what it is. If you don't have if you have a problem, but you can't connect to the community, then I mean, bring it forward. Yeah, shine a light on de-indexing.
Right.
Or
we can't fix the indexing for you, but we can sure gripe about it together.
Yeah, we can bitch about it. That's not a problem. All right. So some people that are actually complaining, I think, are the Facebook advertising community. Over at The Verge by Alex Heath. Facebook is rebuilding its ads to know a lot less about you. Facebook's massive business was built on its ability to track users across the internet, obviously. But now, thanks to looming regulation and other moves to restrict such data collection, that is changing how hundreds of engineers are rebuilding how Facebook ads work to place more value on user privacy, according to Graham Mudd, a top ad executive at the company. So we've known of a number of different changes, and Apple recently introduced a prompt to iPhones that makes developers ask permission to track users across other apps for targeting ads, right? Facebook said that the prompt will likely hurt its revenue growth. Google is also planning something similar for Android phones, and the EU is considering a ban on micro-targeted ads as part of a sweeping legislative proposal called the Digital Services Act. And the Biden administration recently signaled interest in policing the surveillance of users by dominant internet platforms. All right, so that's interesting, and a long freaking winded sentence to talk about privacy is now front and center, and it's been there for a while. And we've seen a lot of different scenarios, especially back in the 2016 elections with, I always forget the name as soon as it comes up, the ad poaching or the user poaching from Facebook. Starts with a C, darn it. But the continued use of personalized data is getting into the mainstream as an issue that has to be resolved. And Facebook is changing its rhetoric about making advertising much more privacy conscious, right? So they're actually mounting a loud PR campaign in objection to Apple's ad tracking prompt, but it seems like they're actually pivoting around, says a spokesperson for Facebook, that they're leaning into this space. However, they disagree with the assertion that this privacy shift for the ads marks a defeat in its fight with Apple. So Apple threw the gauntlet down on the 14.5 OS update that allowed users to basically nullify any type of ad targeting. And Facebook is now shifting how it's delivering its data there. So Alex Heath, who is the senior reporter, actually asked the question: what is driving all these changes that you're working on as it relates to ads and privacy? Is it a fear of regulation that's coming? He raised a big stink about Apple's ad tracking prompt for the iPhone apps last year, saying that was anti-competitive and it's going to hurt small business. But this shift from Facebook right now, it looks like it's capitulating to that philosophy. That's Alex Heath, and he took it to him right there. So basically, read the article. It's a great back and forth between Graham Mudd, the VP of product marketing over at Facebook. I think we're going to see a whole nother set of tools, and it's probably going to lean more towards this flock concept that Google is bringing forward of a kind of a cohort analysis of user behavior that's not an individual targeting, but it's a behavioral targeting that will allow for an anonymity of the individual user, but your behavior is going to actually kind of put you in a particular community and micro communities inside of that. All right, so ran through this with a semi truck. Morty, any thoughts about privacy and this response, this pivot basically by Facebook.
So much jockeying for position in this thing. First off, love the fact that they're talking about, respecting privacy, but the way that they're going to do this is basically like hijacking your user behavior patterns on your phone.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
So we love privacy so much. We're just going to anonymize your behavior patterns on your own phone.
It's an iron. It's an oxymoron. The behavior.
Yeah, which just shows
itself.
you they don't give a crap.
No,
they don't care. Come on, they don't want. It's exactly right. This is a defeat to Apple. They don't want to do this.
All right, but they have enough assets. They have enough pieces, interests, data sets around what you consume inside of Facebook. You can profile easily without allowing your individual hash, your individual ID to be marketed towards. And that's what Apple was actually getting as a prompt, is forcing users to be able to allow that. But there's so many behavior patterns. We are mapped constantly as we interact with digital assets, right?
It's ridiculous because it's so like when you go buy something, and there's so much fine print that you have no idea what the heck this actually is. And it's in such legalese, and unless you're like Johnny Cochran, you have absolutely no idea what it is. That's and right. Then saying, well, you signed off on it. No one's signed off on it. Have you ever read through a legal doc? It's ridiculous. My brother-in-law read through his entire mortgage. I'm like, you're out of your mind. But that's not a real decision from the user. I agree. I don't know what the hell I'm agreeing to. Put it in 5 bullet points. I think Rand Fishkin made this point a long time ago. Like, put it in 5 bullet points. Mm-hmm. Have the user sign off. Hey, click. I agree. Have them under. What are you so afraid of? Obviously, you're afraid they're going to say no.
Right.
But at some point, and if you're a website, if you're a digital marketer, at some point, it's going to come due, and this is not going to continue. And you're not going to have access to all that retargeting information that you so rely on now.
Right. And
you see it already with Flock. And hey, this is practically speaking a less effective approach for retargeters. But you're going to have to figure out a way to collect this data, whether it be through sign-up forms, through collecting the information on your own site or on your own properties, whatever it is. You're going to have to collect that data on your own if you really want that fine-tuned targeting. At some point.
Absolutely. No, you're absolutely right. And the fact of the matter is, advertisers could probably rely on the platforms finding their way past the anonymity pothole. I want to make sure that you guys understand what the priority is that I'm putting on this, is that we're revealing a personal piece of data, right? It's a pothole. They have so much behavioral data. It's not an issue. You're just going to see the platforms adjust, and they can get down to the micro decisions that you're making regularly, be able to move ads in there. So whatever you click on a Facebook feed, yes or no, like what have you, any type of direction that you give Facebook, that is a direct set of marketing data for advertisers to be able to market towards. That's the business. So a privacy pothole. Now, we have talked about this for the longest time on the show, opt-in. Just allow us to opt in off of your website. I'll be happy if you can give me good content from your website. If you're actually moving good quality, useful information, I can certainly be a brand loyalist and jump right in there as long as you give me an opt-in for that and you can market to me, but I got to be in control of it. Conversely, our patterns are out there regularly, and anyway, they're going to find any way to actually get that data in front of you. It's almost like a non-issue.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
There was a thread by someone who worked for one of the social media platforms, mm-hmm. explaining how they get the retargeting information. If you're constantly near someone else's phone, let's say you visit your mom all the time.
Right.
So they realize these 2 phones are connected. So if your mother, search for toothpaste, they'll show you ads for toothpaste, knowing that, hey, maybe she talked to you about toothpaste. You'll be like, oh, this ad's relevant to mom.
That's right.
Let me tell mom about this toothpaste. That's insane.
But it's good. It's hey, if the data's there, I mean, that jump beyond that is like literally the jump past platform.
Get out of my life. Get out of my life.
We're just saying, I mean, any way you cut it, you either participate in that digital space or not. And if for marketers, you're going to rely. You're going to be able to rely on these platforms. They're going to find another way to be able to get that information. I'm not giving up hope that we can actually have a balance of privacy and non-privacy, but I just don't think it's going to happen. I'm a nihilist.
Just being a realist.
Yeah, truly. All right. So, you know what's real? It's great to be able to have a real sponsor on our show regularly. That's Site Strategics, a sponsor of Edge of the Web. We're pioneers in the agile digital marketing methodology. Our core specialties are technical SEO, core web vitals in particular, as well as search engine marketing, social media management and marketing, conversion rate optimization, all focused around results-based marketing that actually works. So if you're interested in what we can do for you, we give a free consultation. Just hit us up at 877-SEO for web, 877-736-4932, or just contact us on our site. Happy to field an hour consultation to talk to you about your digital marketing tactics, what we see as some key advantages that you could take over your competitors, and give you a little bit of a picture of the digital landscape that you're working in. So with all of us over at Site Strategics, we are continually proud of what we do here on the Edge, and we certainly would love to do work for you. All right. Last article, I had to pull this around because we always listen to John Mueller whenever he speaks. So Roger Monti over at Search Engine Journal had a cool article that we wanted to. He always gets a bit more detailed than most authors whenever you're coming across an article. However, that last article about Facebook over at The Verge was pretty deep. So we highly recommend that. But check this out. John Mueller explains the circumstances that would trigger Google to start dropping web pages from their index in response to 500 errors. Now, for those of you listening that don't know the error codes or status codes for websites, there's a number of ways that a web server, communicates to either a browser or a bot that comes across a website. So if the page is rendering correctly, you get a 200 error. If the page cannot be found, you have 400 or 404 errors. You've always seen those. Hell, we had an entire show about 404 errors. But on top of that, if you want to redirect content to another page, you have a 301 or 302. These are all codes that a server provides the Googlebot as it actually tries to fetch a particular page. However, there is another space, and that's the 500 codes. Those 500 codes are this page can't work correctly, or this page can't render correctly, or there's a database problem and it can't fetch this thing. This is a dark space on the server code responses, and if you're continually displaying 500 errors to Googlebot, there's going to be a problem there because it looks as if the site's broken. All right, so before we get into John's response or John's take on this, Morty, any thoughts about the 500 space and what you've seen over your travails? He's just sitting there. Is this mic on?
I'm sorry, I muted myself so I wouldn't interrupt what you were reading. I did it to myself this time.
I am so glad that wasn't me. I was like looking around like, oh no.
No, I mute myself when you do the cold read for the sponsorship, so I don't make any noises, and I don't want to ruin the sponsorship. I don't want Site Strategics to drop us.
As opposed to that's funny. All right. So I guess
but there was a good tweet. Oh, now I'm trying to remember the details of it. Where John was talking about the different 500 errors and what they actually mean, and they're not always the same. Right. And you should check them out. I got to find that. Shoot. We should tweet that out. I'll find it. I'll send it to you. We'll tweet it out. Okay. But also you have to check your depending on what CMS or hosting you're using. Yep. You need to be careful because everything might be fine one day, but you may check things and notice that you have problems. And I am not being an expert in the CMSs myself. Mm-hmm. There are problems with them. So be careful.
Be careful. So basically, it's an internal server error that happens in CMSs. CDNs all have issues.
They all have issues. They have issues. Like they think like, oh, and then by the way, if you think, well, I'll take control over my server, you're just gonna lock yourself out of your server. I love SEOs. Oh, how I control my server. Right.
Yeah, don't do that.
Good for you.
Knock yourself out. It's like It's like a bug light. If you try to run your own server without knowing what you're doing there, I mean,
You
literally,
really like the RSEOs who do. I'm not knocking.
Yeah. I mean, but you got to have some kung fu there in the server technology to be able to fend off hack attempts. It's a mess out there. So rely on those really solid web servers to be able to do that. But when it comes down to 500, you may actually have some widgets on your site that aren't working correctly, are spinning up 500 errors. So there's a plethora of things that go into a WordPress build and other builds with CMSs you got to pay attention to because may not fire correctly. Well, the fact of the matter is Google's paying attention to that. And you can see these 500 errors on Google Search Console. But John Mueller, John Mueller from the Webmasters side of things over at Google, I have his title right in front of me. I should have that emblazoned. That was a person that actually asked a question about their content delivery system and that was set up to block bad bots while actual humans could actually get through, but they were also having other blocking filters set, and potentially Google wasn't able to actually see this content. He responds, a question came up from our technology team whether this represented a real user impact or why we would look specifically at Googlebot and not real user metrics to prove that there's an issue here. So given that context, he had a few questions, and drilling down to it, John responded in kind of going, we don't have any strong thresholds regarding the 500 issues, but essentially what happens with 500 errors is that we try to retry those same pages. And if we continue to see the 500 errors, we will then slow down crawling. And if we continue to see that there are 500 errors, then we will drop those URLs from the index. So that's something if every now and then these individual pages have a 500 error, it's no big deal. We'll retry them and they'll remain indexed, and the next time we retry them, and if it's fine, there's no problem. But if you continue to have 500 errors here, you're going to get dropped. So watch your technical audit. Watch what's happening here. Pay attention to Google Search Console. And a lot of times, those 500s can be sporadic, and you could be dealing with bandwidth issues or technology issues on your cloud service or your hosting service. And you've got to find your way to actually see a pattern in this. And if you're clean as a whistle, that's fantastic. But if you have regular 500s, you are at risk of being de-indexed over time if you're not paying attention to that garden. So there's your public service announcement for the day.
Particularly if you're a site where the content is, you want the crawlers to come, I don't know, like a news site or something similar to that, where you want the crawlers to keep coming back. Mm-hmm. Interesting that he said, like, where we think that we may be causing the issue.
Yeah.
Whereas well, yeah, I wonder if that's it, or if you're just trying to save money on your crawling. But
exactly.
either way you want to, either way you want to slice it.
So they actually did say, if we're possibly harming it, we'll back off our crawl to make sure that we don't hurt your site.
Quite the politician.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes. All right, so monitor your 500s. Go to Search Console and watch what's happening, because if it's in Search Console, they know about it. It's happening. The bots were reporting that, and they're reporting it to you.
Yep.
So pay attention
server
to
logs.
it.
Check server logs.
Absolutely. Check server logs.
And pay attention to the 503 versus the 502. They do mean different things. Temporary problem, permanent problem.
Yep. Database problem.
Right.
Absolutely. All right. You know what's not a problem? Listening and watching #SEO Chat every week, Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern. No problem there. What's going on? Who's hosting it? Morty, are you going to be there?
I will be there. Yes.
Sweet. Who's on the stick?
Azim Digital.
Cool.
A fellow podcaster.
And what's he going to be talking about?
Content data measurement.
How do you measure content?
So you stand on a scale with your laptop open, with the page open that you want, and you measure it.
Yeah, I saw that tweet.
I'm just quoting my own tweet there. Yeah, exactly. You're baiting me.
So check it out.
Well, you have to ask Azim how you do it. SEMrush, by the way, shameless plug, has a great way you can track posts.
That's right.
Blog posts connected to your Search Console and analytics. See it all there in one per post report.
It's a glorious thing.
I like it.
Yeah, it's very pretty. It's very pretty, and very useful information. So check that out on a regular basis. It's SEO chat.
SEO chat, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Thursday. I can plug my own crap. I can do it.
Oh, you weren't doing it, so I just trying to jump in.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Don the shirt, and all of a sudden, what? You just
I'm fumbling through my words. Sound familiar?
No, it does not, because mine are exquisite. So, thanks a lot. All right. Well, that's it for Edge, and everybody say bye to Morty because he's being an asshat today.
Bye, Morty.
We'll play him off stage. Thanks so much for contributing, Morty. We do appreciate it regularly. That's it for Edge News this week. We want to make sure that you check out the news podcast of the week. We're dropping our Christina Azarenko live podcast. Actually, it was yesterday, and you'll be able to listen to it. Wednesday had a great show and talked about dismantling SEO perfectionism. So check that out. And be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to our YouTube channel whenever we do go live, as well as drop all the different video pieces out there as well. From all of us over at Edge, as well as Morty. Now, wait, he is part of Edge now. Now I gotta remember that. We gave him the shirt, so he's part of the team. Stay safe, stay well, and do not be a piece of cyber driftwood. We'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.